Hi everyone, Dr. Mary with 4 Points Family Chiropractic. Thank you for joining us. I am here to speak to you today about breathing and biomechanics and stress and how all of those three things are related, which we don't always consider. But if you think back to times that you're stressed, which are probably more than you'd like, if you're like pretty much anybody, you'll notice that your posture begins to change, right? So you get really tense in the shoulders, maybe your jaw gets tight, and a lot of people work at a computer, so we sort of are mimicking that position anyway when we're doing work, right? If you observe some of your coworkers in the office, maybe they're starting to kind of jut their chin forward, hunch their shoulders in, they're trying to get closer to their screen whether they realize it or not. And it presents like muscle tension, and so people treat it as such, right? They try to stretch, they use those guns that kind of are thumping on the muscle. Maybe they'll go get a massage, do heat, and that can certainly help. But sometimes if the muscle tension is for a reason, it's because your body's trying to do a job to react to something in a way that you might not understand. And one of those jobs is to help with your breathing. We are often shallow breathing without realizing it. So today we're going to talk about those three things: breathing, stress, and biomechanics, and how they are interrelated to each other. Because the way you breathe affects the muscles in your neck, in your torso. Your posture affects how efficiently you can breathe, and stress can change the entire system. Very, very helpful. Amazing. So that was the cat knocking the camera over. He's so helpful. Get reestablished here. Make sure you don't fall. Okay, so breathing and posture. Sometimes the stress comes from inside the house. So let's start with what happens when you take a good, relaxed breath, which is what all of us should be doing on a regular basis, and often are not. So when you are taking a good deep breath, the muscle that should be doing most of the work is not in your neck, it's not in your back, it's your diaphragm. And a lot of us don't consider our diaphragm. So the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that runs up underneath your ribs in your abdomen and separates your chest and your abdomen from each other. So when you take a deep breath, your diaphragm is supposed to relax down into your belly so that your lungs can expand all of the way. But a good breath isn't just expanding your belly forward. If you consider that your abdomen should start to go out 360 degrees. So a good deep breath, you should be breathing into your belly, yes, but into your sides and into the back of your ribs as well. So your ribs should do a bucket handle motion. They should expand out like this when you are taking a good deep breath. So consider that. It should be 360 degree breathing. Now, think about it like an umbrella opening down and out. When your diaphragm descends, your wall, your abdominal wall, accounts for that pressure, which is why often when you're doing a training, you're working with somebody, they're saying, just make sure you breathe through the exercise. That's what they're trying to do, is make sure that you're able to breathe while you're doing the movement pattern. Now, compare that with somebody who spends hours at a computer or is in a position that compromises that. So your head comes forward, your shoulders round, and your rib cage becomes compressed because you're seated. So when that happens, your diaphragm relaxing can't happen because there's nowhere for it to go because you've compressed that area. So the body finds another way, because the body is brilliant, and it will do that. It will protect you. So the way it happens is you start to use what's called your accessory breathing muscles. So predominantly these here in the front to lift up like this. You'll recruit your shoulders, and you'll start to recruit the jaw here to lift like that. And that shouldn't happen. The muscles aren't bad. They're just not supposed to be working that way in that time. They're supposed to help us when respiratory demands increases. So if you're sick, you would have those work. If you're doing a heavy workout, high cardio, that's when those muscles are supposed to start to recruiting. So imagine you using your neck muscles instead to lift your rib cage 100 times a day, more than that, instead of using your diaphragm the way that it's meant to be used. And that's why a lot of people who are not breathing well will have neck and shoulder issues, because they're recruiting the wrong muscles to do the work. And research supports this. A 2019 study found that forward head posture reduced several of the ways that we measure respiratory output, including forced vital capacity, reserve volumes, and peak flow. So it also decreased motion in your lower thorax, which is where a lot of the breathing is supposed to happen. And another study found a relationship between greater head forward posture and poor respiratory measures and increased activity of the sternocleidomastoid, the SCM, which is what runs from here down to here. So that muscle right there. You don't want that overdeveloped from breathing. So your posture changes your breathing biomechanics, and then your breathing biomechanics can increase your posture. So those two things talk to each other. Now, this is why chiropractors will pay attention to this. Sometimes we're asking you if you're breathing well, how you're sitting, your posture. We're not just looking at the discs and the vertebra, we're looking at the neurology behind it. So when we evaluate you, I'm sure you have noticed if you've been in our office, we're not just asking you where you hurt, we're asking you about function as well, because the thoracic spine, where your ribs attach, if that's not moving properly, you can't breathe properly. So if somebody spends hours every day rounded forward in that head forward position with their upper back stiff, then we know that they're not breathing well, that they're going to have some issues with it. So when we say we're adjusting you for function, that's one of the things that we're looking for. So if you know somebody who is at their desk and you can tell that they're starting to do this, we see it in students as well, and if you feel like they need to be assessed, they can come in our office and get the full assessment. We do any necessary neurological testing. We do a thorough history, report of findings, necessary x-rays. It's normally $348. If they mention this Facebook Live, they say the word diaphragm, they can get the entire exam and review findings for $97. That way they can get checked and see if their breathing biomechanics are being influenced by their posture or by something going on in the thoracic spine or in the cervical spine. Those are all things that we will check, but breathing as a system happens in the musculoskeletal nervous system as well. So addressing those movement restrictions, posture, muscular patterns can be one of the best ways to improve breathing function. And we also find that neck pain is linked to breathing dysfunction. So when we're asking if somebody's neck or upper back hurts, that is one of the things that we'll assess. So if you just want to see the difference in how those feel, by the way, if you bring your shoulders back down, so instead of slouching, bring them back, retract your shoulder blades, try to stack your ear over your shoulder, sit up tall and take a deep breath in. And if you compare that to how you're breathing when you sit on the couch, when you're sitting at the desk, you'll notice a big difference. And then just try to do 10 of those breaths and see if you can feel any difference in your stress or in your nervous system function. And speaking of stress, the way your body responds to it, think about what happens when something startles you or you're under a lot of stress that you're aware of, right? So we don't really breathe slow. We're taking, you almost gasp for air, right? Sometimes people will call it air hunger. So you're taking quick, short, shallow breaths. Your heart rate increases, your breathing's faster, your muscles are ready for action, you feel like you need to run or move quickly. All of that's very useful if you're under attack, but the likelihood that you're actually under attack is quite low. What really sets us into those situations is actually things more like difficult conversations, maybe your phone dings and you're not expecting it. You're expecting an email that you don't really want to read. Maybe you get a phone call. It can be financial stress, it can be traffic. All of these things will create a sympathetic response in your body. And when that happens, you're not required to physically run away, but your body thinks that you are. So it's preparing as though you're supposed to do that. And the breathing and the autonomic nervous system are closely connected. So faster, shallow breathing accompanies a fight or flight response. Those two things go together. And when there's tension, that connection becomes really interesting. The breathing shifts upwards into the chest and you recruit those accessory muscles more because you're meant to be moving, you're meant to be running. So if you're stressed and you're sitting in computer recruiting those muscles, you can see how posture starts to play a part there as well. The rib cage isn't really moving. You're breathing primarily into your upper chest, your neck muscles are helping, and then people are confused and they're like, why are my shoulders so tight? That's so weird. I'm stretching, I'm working out. But if you're breathing thousands of times a day and that's how you're doing it, you're creating that tension without realizing you're creating that tension. But so breathing works in the opposite direction as well. We can't simply tell our heart to just slow down and chill out, but we can change our breathing intentionally, right? We can control that through several different ways. And slow breathing research found of physiological effects involving cardiovascular regulation, heart rate variability, autonomic function, with particularly interesting effects in the 4 to 10 breaths per minute range. So an interesting experiment is to count how many breaths you take in a minute. And you might find that it's more like 17 to 20 breaths per minute, which is actually quite fast. If you intentionally shoot for something lower, like 4 to 10 breaths a minute, you will see your nervous system respond in a positive way. And your cortisol is also affected by that. So one randomized study in healthy adults found that diaphragmatic breathing training was associated with reduced negative effect and lower cortisol. So it's not about just getting oxygen into your lungs. It's also about controlling your nervous system. And that gives us something practical that we can work on. Now, again, in the world of chiropractic, when we are looking at somebody's nervous system and we know that they are in fight or flight, they're in a sympathetic response, that's something that we can impact as well, depending on how their nervous system is showing up for us. So if you know somebody who you see them breathing quite shallow, they're having trouble getting the full breath, you know that they're stressed a lot of the time, that's something that we assess as well. So if they want to get checked out for that, get their posture assessed, they can call our office. We're at 512-345-9355, and they can come get the full exam, including any necessary neurological testing, the x-rays, a full report of findings and assessment. We'll check their breathing. It's normally $348. They can get it for $97 if they mention this webinar and say the word diaphragm. So it's something that we do check quite a bit. So ways that you can improve your breathing really quickly right away. Practice the 360-degree diaphragmatic breathing. So you put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and you take a deep breath in. Most people, when they do this, they will feel this hand move first. Do another deep breath and try to expand your hand into your belly before you feel your chest hand rise very much. It's going to feel really different. Do 10 to 20 of those in a row. And if you were to check your heart rate before and after, you would notice a different number. And you want to be thinking not just into your belly, you want to think expanding your ribs, right? You want to be opening up your ribs. So don't just like push your belly forward. Try to expand into it. You should feel it in the back as well, in your obliques. So the muscle that is on the side, and then the QL, which is the muscle that attaches from the bottom of your ribs to the top of your hip. You want to feel that move as well. But if you do those breaths, you will feel better. The position that you're breathing from is also something that you can control and improve. Give them a better mechanical position. Again, most of us are sitting right now. I can feel myself rounded forward just sitting, speaking to the camera. So periodically, just check your position. This is a habit that you can get into. Some people will set alarms for this. Some people will associate it with like every time they check their email, they reset their position. So think about 3 landmarks: your ear, your rib cage, and your pelvis. You don't need military posture. You don't need to pull your shoulders back all the way. You just want to think about stacking your body. So you're bringing your head back over your shoulders, back over your rib cage, sit over your pelvis. That'll prevent you from rounding out your upper back and shoving your lower back forward as well, which we love because that takes pressure off of all of those joints. And then just let your shoulders relax and then breathe. Research involving office workers with forward head posture found that exercises that focused on scapular stabilization, so your shoulder blades, and thoracic extension, so rib movement, improved your posture and your respiratory function. And they found that research in 6 weeks. So this is something that your body responds to very, very quickly. But again, this is something that chiropractors do check. When we are checking your mid-back and your thoracic spine, thoracic mobility is one of the things that we're assessing for. So all of your ribs attached to your thoracic spine, right? If we can get all of those moving in a way that makes sense and that is smooth and consistent, then it can help your breathing patterns as well. So we work on mobility. So just think of it overall as your mobility, your breathing, and your repetition is where you're going to get stronger and build better habits in these areas. Slow down your exhale. Most people will take a really, really deep breath in and then blow it out very quickly, but the exhale is where a lot of the breathing function happens. It's particularly useful if you are feeling tense. So don't think of it as a series of giant deep breaths. Think of it as a slow breath. So the best way to do it is called box breathing, or not the best way. The easiest way I find is box breathing. Take an inhale for 4 seconds and then an exhale for 6. Sounds really simple when you're just talking about it, but in execution, it takes a little bit of practice. So 4-second inhale, 6-second exhale. And you will notice that your function feels a lot better after that. If it feels uncomfortable, you can shorten it. You can do 4 and 4, but it isn't about hitting a perfect number. It's about making sure that your breathing is slow and comfortable and controlled, that you have control over the breathing pattern. And again, the research on slow breathing in the range of 4 to 10 breaths per minute really positively influences your respiratory efficiency and your cardiac output as well, and your heart rate variability and your autonomic balance. So all those things together. But when you do that, you will notice that your jaw loosens, your shoulders drop back, most of your neck muscles will start to relax, and then you just put it all together. Just do that on a regular basis. Get into the habit of doing it. If you are somebody who is very active and you are practicing it when you are still, start trying to implement it when you are doing your activity. Things like yoga and Pilates are known for encouraging this and giving you more strategies for it. I love both of those things for my patients and for myself. But if you're doing another sport, just try it. Maybe not the 4-6 because you're going to be breathing faster, but make sure you're expanding into all of those areas. So it's not really about what muscles you're stretching or need to get worked on necessarily. It has more to do with how your breathing is happening, your position while you're breathing, how you're doing it when you're doing it, and what you're doing when you're stressed, how your body's responding to it. So what I want you to remember, if you have any takeaway, is that your breathing mechanics and your body mechanics are not separate. They go together and you can influence them with changing your breathing, changing your posture, focusing on those things, and the repeat of that on a long-term basis, and you're going to have great results from it. How's the spine moving? How's the rib cage moving? Stack your posture, relax your shoulders, and just make sure you breathe, and make sure your exhale's a little bit longer than your inhale. Give those a try and let us know if it makes a difference. And again, I am Dr. Mary with 4 Points Family Chiropractic. Thank you for tuning in, and I wish you a good, easy breath.